very soon. Just 2 more minutes, children, and we'll start with our class. I'm just waiting for others to join. I hope you all are doing really well at home and the online classes are keeping you busy and occupied. Though we cannot meet each other, but definitely we always meet here in the class. So this is another very good way of meeting each other. I hope you all have brought your flamingos with you, and we are going to take deep water. I had sent a message to everybody, and even in my last class, I had told all of you that we'll be doing deep water from the book Flamingo. I'm sure you all are ready with that. Keep your notepads and your pencil and pen ready to jot down the important points. All these days we have been doing a little drab lessons, but today it's really an exciting one and it is going to give you that adrenaline rush, children. And I'm sure you're going to be in good spirits after this. Well, we'll start with our class now. Just remember, children, this Nelson Mandela's famous quote. He said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." So fear is a sign of weakness. We have to conquer all our fears. So I have a very short video of 2 minutes for all of you, which will bring that adrenaline rush to you before we start with our lesson.
Likes to push it bigger and will be now the world's largest organization.
Well, children, I'm sure you enjoyed this adrenaline rush, a short video of 2 minutes. And this is something which is really, all of us long to have that. Yes, this kind of a spirit, but staying indoors is something which is keeping us from moving out of the house and going for even for a walk. But yes, we keep sending you videos on fitness, and I'm sure you all are practicing those also at home and keeping mentally and physically fit for when you come back to school. I'm sure you all are going to be really in a good shape. Well, there are not only adventure sports like skydiving, but we have various water sports also, like water skiing, wakeboarding, windsurfing, surfing, bodyboarding, whitewater rafting, kite surfing, and kiteboarding or jet skiing. Many of you must have practiced also, or you have had an experience of all this also, and you know how very exciting it is. Yes. Okay, but just tell me one thing. I'm sure that just a minute. Yeah. You all are also. I mean, we all have some phobias or the other. You know, strange kind of phobias. Acrophobia, which is a fear of heights. Aerophobia, which is a fear of flying. Arachnophobia, which is a fear of spiders. Yes, some children really feel, I mean, many of us do feel really frightened of the spiders. Yes, fear of thunder and lightning, astrophobia. Autophobia, fear of being alone. Claustrophobia, fear of confined or crowded spaces. Hemophobia, the fear of blood. Some people see the blood and they faint, they have that phobia. Ophidophobia, fear of snakes. Zoophobia, of animals. And hydrophobia, the fear of water. So what is this phobia? They're all apprehensions, they're fears. We get nightmares at times, of all these things. But then how do we handle them? That is very important. We cannot live our lives with fear. So you tell now and decide for yourself, what are your fears or phobias? Just pen it down, children. If at all you have any fear, it's very important. If you pen them down, you can identify what is your phobia and then you can work on it. So identifying and penning them down is really important. So what are your fears and phobias? I want you to pen it down. Have you ever tried to overcome your fears? What effort do you make? What effort do you make to overcome your fears? Write down. Just pen it down. Just short phrases. I want you to do it. Right? I hope I am very clear about this, and you'll be able to pen down, identify, and pen it down. Now, the next question is, what do you require to overcome your fear? Yes, the most important thing is that we have identified our problem and then we are going to overcome it. And how do we overcome it, or what is required to overcome our fear? This is very, very simple, children, very, very simple. That we will do it in a short while. In the next coming slides, I'll tell you how you can overcome your fear. Remember, what does an adventure sport require, or any kind of an adventure? Any kind of an adventure, always, first of all, you should be very curious to know how things, how an adventure works. And then you start, you read about it or you see people doing it. So you're curious to go out and do that. And then what do? You meticulously plan for it. It requires meticulous, till the minute last details you need to plan. Otherwise, you will involve a lot of risks. A risk is definitely involved in any adventure. And of course, if it is not an individual sport, it involves a team, then team spirit. Every member of the team has to be really fit mentally and physically. Yes, fitness is very, very important, right? It's not just jumping on the mountain and you feel that, yes, I have the emotional fitness and I'm very brave. No, you require physical fitness as well. And the grit, most important, the courage to go out and do something different. Attention to the minute detail, and be prepared for emergencies. Not to think about what would be the consequence. Why should I think about the consequences? I'm going to be perfect. No, we have to be prepared for the emergencies too. Remember when you read the lesson, We Are Not Afraid to Die, in class 11, how the author had prepared to the minutest details, and he had tried several times on that small dingy of his. And that is the reason that he was able to overcome that particular disaster. And the entire family was all together. And that is the reason they fared well and they were the winners. So we have to have that team spirit, that fitness, the grit, determination, and most important is that you should have that kind of fitness of both mind and of the physical body. That's the reason we tell you a little bit of yoga every day is very important. Okay. We'll start. You must be wondering, what is ma'am talking about? What is the reason? Yes, I'm talking to you about Deep Water by William Douglas. This author, William Douglas, was born on October 16th, 1898 in Maine, Minnesota, to Julia Fisk and Reverend Douglas. His father was working for the missionaries, so he got the title of a reverend. He was the second of the three children, and he became his mother's favorite and earned the nickname of Treasure. This is his mother's role in his life was immense. And when their father left them, he died at a very, when William Douglas was a very young boy, hardly 4 to 6 years old. His father had passed away, and his upbringing was mainly on the shoulders of his mother. But the mother did her best, and that is what you find. I'll tell you about Douglas, how he grew up to be one of the most important and outstanding personalities of America. In 1901, Douglas was stricken with polio that proved nearly very fatal, but he did not allow himself to give in to this. Yes, he really worked very hard, and he loved swimming, He loved swimming, and though it was because of his skinny legs, he used to feel ashamed at many times to go to the pool and, diving. He would dive into the pool so that nobody would see his skinny legs. He would sit there for a while, hiding his legs in the pool, and he would go quietly into that. But there was a long journey before he learned swimming. Shortly after his father's death in 1904, the Douglas family moved to Yakima, Washington, where Douglas spent most of his youth. Now you have to, see that what kind of a personality was he. He was an American jurist and a politician who served as an associate justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. He was nominated, I use the word nominated, by Franklin Roosevelt. Yes, and that too at a very young age. At the age of 30, he was declared as the most outstanding law professor in the nation. At the age of 30, just see. And at the age of 40, he became the Supreme Court justice at such a young age, because he was nominated by President Roosevelt, and he found that this boy had immense potential. So he was appointed as the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court by President Roosevelt and confirmed on April 4, 1939. He is well known for his strict commitment to civil liberty. He was known then and is known even today. He has authored many opinions that expressed his views on individual rights. Yes, and the Times magazine called Douglas as the most doctrinaire and committed civil libertarian ever to sit on the court. He served as a justice for 36 years and 211 days, children. So this was a remarkable achievement. So you can see he's not just an author. Author was his favorite pastime. He was more of a justice serving in the Supreme Court. Well, we are going to read the Deep Water, but before I move on to the lesson, I want you to know what is the theme and what is the sub-theme of the lesson, and what are the values raised from this lesson. First of all, children, you must know that it is this particular account is a part of the book which he has written, and it's a real life personal account of experiencing fear and the steps taken to overcome it. Also, we're going to talk about bullying and its impact. You all know bullying is very, very wrong, right? And it is just think, how can you bully somebody? Everybody has their own rights. They have their shortcomings, they have their weaknesses, and their strengths as well. So we can't, just because somebody is very strong and powerful, can bully others. No, this cannot. This should not be done. And it is offensive. You hurt others' feelings and emotions. So what was the impact of this bullying on this boy, Douglas? And most important, how did he overcome this fear of his? So we are going to, in the sub-theme you can understand now is the psychological analysis of the fear, which we are going to do here. So the values which have been raised here through this lesson is that the determination of the character, that is the author himself, his optimistic approach, his perseverance to overcome his fear, diligently he worked hard towards it, he showed courage and did not give in to the fear, and his endurance. All these things are very important, children, if we need to overcome any kind of a fear we have, right? So I'll tell you more about the chapter. From where has the chapter been picked up? This lesson is actually an excerpt from his autobiographical book of Men and Mountains by William Douglas himself. And he talks about how, in this lesson, how he developed a tremendous fear of water after a near-death experience in a swimming pool. I'll tell you how this was a near-death experience in a swimming pool with his father. This was an experience which he had, and this had in a very everlasting, fear which developed in him, but he did try to overcome it. He also talks about how he became a prisoner of his fear and how he overcame it. And as the story is written in first person, he himself is describing the story, so it becomes all the more gripping and very, very inspirational. You can see this book of Men and Mountains, where he's described about his childhood experiences, and he became a great mountain climber too, And so he was a multifaceted personality. Whatever he did to the best. And he was very much influenced by the then president, Franklin Roosevelt. The president had an immense role or an immense, impression on his mind. Okay, now coming to the chapter now. We'll begin our chapter with, first I tell you about the role of the Yakima River in his life. Because after his father's death, they had come to Yakima and they had settled here. So, the river near William's house had a great influence on him, though it was a very dangerous river and it had dangerous currents. So many people had got drowned in that river every year, year after year. And the mother was very concerned for William because whenever he wanted to go for swimming, she would deprive him from doing that, and she would keep warning him. I know she would give him constant reminders, that the Yakima River is very dangerous. It is very dangerous, and you need not go there. And it is a very treacherous river. She uses the word treacherous, cunning. What is it, cunning? How can a river be cunning, children? River is cunning, because when the river changes, some rivers, they have the ability to change their course anytime. They can change their course and thus cause a huge destruction on the people living on the beaches. Now, what happened on the shores? So what happened is that because of these incidents which were happening year after year, the Yakima River got the name of being treacherous, and the mother was definitely very concerned about her son, so she did not allow him to go to the Yakima River to go for swimming. Now, it was her concern, but at that impressionable age, when he was hardly 4 to 6 years, the mother's warning, it did have an unforeseen impact on him. So he got frightened of water. And the fear of water was so deep down in him that he would not even go to the swimming pool to enjoy a swim. So, sometimes knowingly or unknowingly, we do inculcate fears in others. Here the mother was very concerned, so she warned the child, but repeated warnings, to the child made the child feel really frightened of the water. Okay, this was the initial influence, right? But then how did this become an inherent fear in him? There was another incident which added on to this, and that was when William's father took him to the beach in California when he was around 4. They were standing on the beach there and they stood in the surf. The water went over his head. A huge wave came lapping onto him and, it engulfed him. Unlike other children, they would have just held the father's hand and they would have enjoyed that. We all enjoy the water lapping when we stand on the shore, the huge waves lapping onto us. It's really a wonderful experience. We get completely washed away. So, but this did not have this impact on him. His father standing there laughing, and the boy was frightened to the core. He got so frightened, and it was then that he was completely knocked down. And when the water swept over him, he got buried in the water. And then when his breath was gone, he's just a child of 4 years old. When the breath was gone, he really got frightened. And on top of it, he saw his father laughing. So there was a terror in his heart. He was terrorized. And he was strangely terrorized by the overpowering effect of the waves on him, right? So he was frightened to the core. Sometimes in the childhood, if we experience certain such kind of accidents do happen with us or incidents happen with us, they leave a scar forever. So this is what happened with Douglas also. He did not enjoy swimming at all, and he was completely terrified of the water. Okay. But then, his mother wanted him to learn how to swim. So she said, you have to overcome your fear. So she said, no, not to the river, Yakima. You must go to the YMCA pool, the pool which was there close to their house. And she said, you can go and learn swimming over there along with the other children. William was very nervous. But after 3 or 4 days, he saw other children also there and they also going. He tried to imitate them and he gained some confidence. However, this confidence of his did not last very long. And unfortunately, there is another incident which took place with him. And what was that? It was a misadventure. And what is a misadventure? It is opposite of an adventure. An adventure is something which gives you that adrenaline rush, that excitement, that thrilling, that infuses high energy in you. But a misadventure can be very terrifying. It can also take somebody's life. So an adventure leaves you with happy memories, while a misadventure leaves you with a scarred and a terrible or a terrified and a terrorized soul, right? So William had such a terrifying experience while he was waiting for his friends to join him for a swimming class at the pool. He was sitting by the side of the pool and then he was waiting. I told you earlier, he had skinny legs and he was very ashamed and shy of his skinny legs, So he dipped his legs in the water and he was waiting for others to come so that he can also duck into the water. And then what happened, see? The misadventure took place. What was the misadventure? William was waiting by the side of the pool because he did not want to go in alone. And it is then that a well-built 18-year-old boy, he calls him as a big bruiser, he picked William up and threw him into the deep end of the pool. Now, actually, William was in awe of this boy, this 18-year-old boy, because, he had those rippling muscles and he was very strong. He calls him as having, calls him as a beautiful physical specimen because he himself was not that physically strong. So he liked the body of this big bruiser and, he was in awe of him. And when the boy came and, he threw him to the far end of the pool, deep end of the pool. The pool has a gradient, from shallow to the deep end. So this is how he was thrown into the pool then. So William went to the bottom of the pool and he started swallowing water. He was frightened to the core. Yet children, the boy did not lose his wits, he remained calm there, and he tried to strategize. He tried to plan as to what it is to be done now so that he can save himself. He made a plan in his mind. Imagine when a child is, I'm talking about a child here, not a grown up man. When a child is going down deep into the water and he doesn't know swimming, he's still in the learning process, the boy is able to plan. He did not involve in, he did not get gripped in the fear. Rather, he started planning. What should I do now to save myself? Now, this was a very intelligent move. So when his feet hit the bottom, he thought, he decided, I'm going to jump upwards. Jump upwards. See, when you throw a cork into the water, the cork can come up. But a person who is so heavy, and we are having the effect of the gravity on us also, so it's going to pull us down, right? We're not like a cork to come up. It's so light. So the boy tried, when he thought, when my feet will hit the bottom, I would jump upwards. I would give a push to myself, and I will jump upwards, and then I'll paddle to the edge of the pool. It wasn't so easy, children. It wasn't so easy. I mean, one who gets drowned and just trying to push himself up and come out, no, it's not that easy, because we are working against the gravity. So what did he do? See, it was nearly a death experience, and William did panic. After all, he's a young boy. He did panic, but even in this duration, he did not lose any hope, or he did not lose his wits. He remained calm, and he tried to strategize what to do. He was suffocating. He tried to shout, but no voice came from the water. And he hit out with all his strength. He tried his best to fight the water, but you cannot fight with the water. He tried to bring his legs up, but they all felt paralyzed. And it felt as if a huge force was pulling him back into the water. That is the gravitational pull. So he began, and when you are deep in the water, you are going through a difficult time, and then you have to think also, and you're not able to breathe properly. So what happened? The oxygen was not going into his head. He began to feel a little dizzy, unconscious, but he did not give up. He kept focusing on his plan. This is the most important thing, children. He did not give in, and he focused on his plan. What was the plan? That how he would jump up, hit out at the water, and paddle to the edge of the pool. I mean, he thought it's going to be easy, but the poor boy did not know it's going to be a big struggle. So it did not work. He kept going down again, and now sheer stark terror hit him. You understand the meaning of the word stark terror to the children? Stark is naked. Terror is, it's the, you can call it, there's nothing beyond terror, When you are completely terrorized, means you are in the grip of the fear. So there was naked fear in him, right? That how am I going to save myself? What is going to happen now? There were so many questions, but in this jumbled up situation also, he did not give up his senses. He was totally lost in absolute fear. Only his heart was pounding, right? And he knew that he's alive. Otherwise, he felt, I'm completely gone. I'm completely over now, right? Let's see what he did. The near-death experience continues. See, sometimes, what happens that when we are in a very difficult situation, the time doesn't seem to tick past. We feel it starts as if the needles have started moving much more slower. So, first time he tried to move up, he was unsuccessful. Again, second time, when after coming down, he hit the bottom. He thought, he decided, I'm going to jump again. He put all his effort, and he again tried to jump up, but nothing happened. He was still in the water, and there was water all around him. Remember, he was thrown into the deep end of the pool, not the shallow end. So he was still in the water. He shook as if a charge of electricity had gone through him, and he trembled with fright. His legs and arms would not move because they're tired, they become so heavy, right? He tried to shout out to his mother, but nothing happened. See, even at even if we are grown up, we always remember our mothers whenever there is a difficult time. We call out to our mothers for help. So this boy, as such, he was very connected to his mother. He tried to call out his mother, but nothing could happen because no voice reached out. This way, each time he tried, each time when he started to go down for the third time, it's only after the third time he gave up. And each time when he was trying, he was trying his best, but his legs felt paralyzed and becoming all the more stiffer, all the more rigid with fear. He tried to scream, nothing happened, nothing worked out. He felt it's going to be my end now. And then when he called out for help to his mother, there was still no sound. His brain went blank because no oxygen is going to the blank. He's unable to breathe and he no longer felt even fear. Why? How was it that he stopped fearing also? Because he's become unconscious. He lost his consciousness and then he stopped struggling. When you lose consciousness, you do not know what happens around you. So he lost consciousness and he stopped struggling. So what happened then? Was he still lying underneath the pool? Let's see. Luckily, when his body had become limp and strangely he had lost all his senses, and slowly and gradually, he felt as if everything had come to an end. But then suddenly, strange thing happened. What was the strange thing? He was coming out of the water. He felt he was coming out of the water. He was only subconscious, not he was certainly only partially unconscious, but still there was some sense in him. He tried to open his eyes, but he was not able to do. And then when he went down again, all efforts were ceased. His body was relaxed now, but somehow somebody saw this happening, right? And the boy who had thrown William into the pool, he just, he was the one who brought him up, and there were other people also. They brought him out of the pool, and he was made to lie down flat on his back, and then he vomited also. He vomited all the water. Now the boy who had thrown William into the pool said, that he had not meant any harm to William. For him, it was just a joke he was cracking. And just see what happened to the child. The child could have been dead and nobody may have noticed him. Yes, and he could have been dead. So people did not like this. This all, William was able to hear. Though he was in an unconscious state, he was still able to overhear certain things. There was some sense somewhere. So people were not amused at this statement of the boy. They told the bully that these jokes could have cost William's life. William felt very weak and his body trembled. And that night, he could not eat anything. He could not eat anything because he felt sick deep into the core, to the core of his heart. To the stomach. He felt he was trembling. He cried on his bed. He went back home and he cried. And for days together, the fear kept haunting him. Even, a slight exertion which he did was making him feel very wobbly. What is wobbly? Wobbly is weak in the knees. And, he was feeling so sick. And he decided that he would never, ever go back to the pool. And this is how he developed an extreme fear of water. And this had a great impact on him. Let's see what happened to Douglas then after this. So children, any incident which takes place does not have just the immediate impact. It also has long-term impacts. So did this incident of drowning leave a long-term impact on him? Let's find out. What was the long-term impact of misadventure? So you understand now what is a misadventure? See, William never went back to the pool. He feared and avoided water. So he stopped swimming. So when he grew older, people in English countries, for them, swimming is one of the favorite pastimes and also one of their favorite hobbies. So when he grew older, he was attracted to pastimes such as fishing, canoeing, rafting, and many more such games. And even in the office, when people would go on a holiday and they would ask him that, why don't you join us for all this? He would refuse. So this handicap with him, it stayed with him for years together. When people would go out, he would refuse. So this was a handicap for him and it remained. But however hard he tried, he could not get over his fear of water. Now, children, this had an impact. What was the impact? It ruined all his fishing, canoeing, rafting, and so many other, activities which others would enjoy and which he was deprived of. So this was the long-term impact. As soon as his feet was in the water, the terror would come back and would paralyze his legs. His heart would pound and he wouldn't be able to move. And this feat ruined all his life. But William was determined to get over it. He decided that I must get over this fear of mine. See, once the moment you start deciding that I have to work on my fear and I have to work on my shortcomings, and you start strategizing and planning to work on them, you will find half the battle is done. So this is what happened. See, how did he overcome his fear? The next important part of the story now is, how did he overcome his fear? William understood that the only way to get over his phobia would be to learn swimming. So he just cannot stand at the edge of the pool and see other people swimming and he'll keep fearing. He wanted to overcome this. So what did he do? The first thing, he hired an instructor and he practiced for an hour, 5 days a week. It took him 3 months, children, 3 months to be able to relax his body. And then he learned how to inhale and exhale while swimming. And finally, he learned how to control his legs. He started in October and it was in April before the instructor was able to say that now, Williams, you can go and enjoy a swim. Right? So how did he do all this? See, I'll just brief you a little more here now. How did he overcome this? William was not sure if the fear was gone, even though the instructor had done it. The instructor actually worked very hard with him. Bit by bit, he taught him how to learn swimming. Yes, what did he do was that he had hired him in the month of October. As I told you in my last slide, he had hired him in October, and till April, he was working on William Douglas, right? So what was he working on? He was actually, how did he, start teaching him? What did he do? First thing was that he tied a rope, he attached a rope to his, he put a belt around him first, right? And then a rope was attached to a belt through a pulley, which went overhead. Now, this overhead cable, there was an overhead cable, and this pulley was attached to that overhead cable. And he made William move back and forth over the swimming pool. Why did he do this week after week? To drive away the fear of the water from him, inside him, What did he do? He would keep moving, each trip, on each trip, when the poet, when the the instructor would, give him a ride back and forth, each time when he would come to the pool, deep end of the pool, the panic would seize him again and again. And each time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope, he would feel a little relaxed. But when, he would go down, he would send him a little down, again the fear would come back. So in this way, he kept on doing for days and days just to drive the fear of the water. Next, what he did was that for 3 months, he made him, go deep into the water and, start inhaling, learning the process of inhaling and exhaling inside the water, raise his nose and inhale. And like this, hundreds of times he made him do this exercise. In this way, bit by bit, he tried to shed his fear. Not once, it's not possible, because the kind of nearly death experience which he had gone through, it was difficult for him to do it in one step. So bit by bit, he tried to shed his fear. But every time, he would go down, still the fear would return, though in now small parts, but it would return. And the next exercise which he made him do was that he made him sit by the side of the pool and asked him to keep, kicking his legs. This was to strengthen his leg power. This also was practiced several times, and then piece by piece, he built a swimmer out of Douglas. It was in April then, finally, he was able to, he was through with him and he said, now you can go and swim. But then, William was not sure if the fear was gone because he still had those vestiges of fear in him still. So what did he do? He swam in the pool till July, but the pool was a very safe place. So he swam in the pool till July. But wanted to, from April to July, I'm telling children, April the instructor was gone. So until July, he practiced in the pool itself. But then he wanted to see if the fear would return in a different scenario, in a different condition, that is in the river or in the lake or whatever it is. So what did he do was that he packed up his bags and he went to Lake Wentworth and swam 2 miles across the lake. But when he put his face under the water and he would see the bottomless water, the fear would come back. But what would he do? The fear would come back. But now he had learned to talk to the fear and he would laugh it off. He also used to say, he used to laugh and say, well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me? And then the fear would run away. See, you have to talk to yourself, children. It is so important to talk to yourself. What did he do? He talked to himself and he said, Mr. Terror, what do you think? Are you trying to frighten me? And in this way, the fear would run away and he would be able to swim. But still, he was not very sure. So he went up to a secluded lake in the mountains. And why did he go to the mountains? Because it was a lonely area and nobody was there to save him now. And then it was a completely a different lake, a secluded area it was. And, he was able to swim in that lonely lake without fear. He was filled with joy. But, he wanted to really feel very proud of himself that finally, yes, there's no vestiges of fear remaining, not even in small amounts. He tried every stroke in the waters, he swam the crawl, he crawled on the waters, he tried the breaststroke, the side stroke, the backstroke, everything he tried, but this time now the terror would not return. But one last thing he again wanted to try. And what was that? Whenever there were some residual doubts also, he would not give it up, till he was damn sure that it is not going to come back again. So what did he do? He went to the Conrad Meadows, and the Conrad Creek, and he went to the Med Glacier. He camped there where there was nobody. It was a lonely place. And next morning, as soon as he landed there, he went into the pool and he was successful. This time the fear did not return. And he shouted with joy, the Gilbert Peak. You can see the pictures, the Gilbert Peak is a huge peak there, right? And he shouted from there. And when he heard the echo coming back from the peak, he felt he had conquered the fear. So children, it requires a lot of grit, courage, determination, and willingness to overcome the fears. It's not easy. It's not easy to see that, okay, everybody has fears, so I can also live with some fears. No, we must learn to overcome our fears. Regular practice, which helped him to overcome the fear, was that which helped him to break the shackles of the fear and break himself free. So this is what he did. But this is not over yet. William wins and he masters the art of swimming. So what was the reason behind all this? How did he do it? See, children, the relentless pursuit to learn swimming and to banish fear not only bore fruit, but also taught him some valuable lessons in life. As I told you, President Roosevelt had a great influence on him because from the very age of 30, he had been dubbed as one of the best law professors in the nation. And President Roosevelt found great talent in the boy. So he nominated him to the Court of Justice there, and as an assistant there first. And President Roosevelt used to tell him, what? All we have to fear is fear itself. How very true, children. Because all we have to fear is fear itself. It is a fear only which actually pulls us down, which will not help us to grow, which will not help us to overcome it. So the only thing we have to fear is that we need to drive away the fear from. We should not allow the fear to sink into us. Yes, if we are able to drive away the fear from us, then we will be successful. So all we have to fear is fear itself. Now, this is in context to this story. This is what Roosevelt said, but this we should all adopt. Be it the fear of maths. I have a fear of maths. I'm not very good at it. I have a fear of maths. I try to overcome it. Yes, though I have not been able to do it yet. Yes, it's a confession I'm making. But yes, I have that. We all have to work hard to overcome our fears. Douglas had survived a near-death situation once and later learned to dispel the long shadow the horror had cast on his psyche. Because swimming is a big time activity there in foreign countries, though it's not in India. We all do not practice swimming. So, excuse me, he did not want to lose out on this game. So he said, even though it had been a near death situation, I am going to fight it out. And the conquest, over death, it was almost a conquest, over death-like experience. I wouldn't say death, but it was a near-death experience, which he had. Emboldened him, made him strong, made him courageous to defy fear and venture out onto nerve-wracking fates. After that death-like experience, going to the Lake Conrad, going to New Hampshire and Lake Wentworth, and on all alone, and swimming there was something which was really very, very bold, courageous, and a daring act, because he had gained that courage. He had gained that the confidence, that he is now able to swim. He is now there's no fear in me. So that emboldened him. The conquest emboldened him. See, we have to overcome our fears. And moreover, a very important thing actually, when somebody experiences a near-death experience, when one goes through, then the urge to live becomes all the more. Why? Because, when one has experienced death so closely and comes back from the clutches of death, it becomes, they understand, such a person understands, that what it is, what life is, that life is so very precious, so very precious. So he knew that he got drowned. It was all, for him, he was dead. He had thought, I'm dead. But it was people who brought him back to life, and then, he was alive. But for him, he had gone into the clutches of the death. And coming back from that was really a tremendous task for him, and which he did overcome. He emerged a much stronger man from the childhood ordeal, but simply because he chose to confront dread through frontal assault. He went straight to the, to the fear, and he said, "Mr. Terror, are you trying to frighten me?" Right? So what does it show? He faced the fear and he did not give in to the Mr. Terror or Mr. Fear. I hope you have been able to understand the lesson now. There are certain points here. I'll just tell you how to read the lesson once again and be very clear about it. I have already told you the note making aspect of making notes for you for all subjects. Now, remember, you can divide the lesson into 2 parts, or I can say 3 parts also. First part is his first experience in the water, that is with his father, right? And the second, you can talk about the misadventure which took place with the young, the bully. Children, don't get confused about the father's experience with the misadventure and the bully. Bully is a misadventure, and the with the father, it was a different thing, right? Children often get confused here. Don't get confused in this. With the father, with the father, it was a bad experience, but with the bruiser, it was a misadventure because that brought his almost close to the death. So that is a misadventure. And how did he come out of it? All that in this particular part. And the third part, you can divide the story like how did he overcome his fear? So based on these subheadings, you can make your note making. Remember to use a flow chart also. Where can you use your flow chart? You can use your flow chart when he was trying and struggling to come out of the water. That one case, and second case when he was learning from the instructor. So I hope you will be able to make notes for the lesson and clarify all your doubts. Once you make the notes, children, your lesson will be very, very clear. Coming to the next one now. This is what I have for all of you. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. So remember not to fear anything. And if you at all have a fear, in Hindi we call it as dar ki aage jeet hai. So everything you want is on the other side of the fear. Never fear anything. Learn to overcome your fears. For today, I will give you a small homework here. Once again, read the chapter. I'm sure you're clear and you must have marked the important points in the lesson. Make notes. Children, next class, I want some of you to, make the notes. I have seen in 12th class, there are some children who really make very good notes and they have a habit of mixing up both the flow chart and the other kind of a note making. Two types there are. One is a flow chart and just writing short phrases. There are some children who have really done very well in the exams also, and even in class I have seen. So do make notes, children. It will help you to have a good grip over the lesson. So divide your chapter into 2 parts, or you can do it in 3 parts, and you can make sub points also. Question answers, we will do it in the next class. And if you have any queries, you can always ask me on my mail. You can post your queries on alpinachavla@lancersconvent.net. Now, when I come back to you for the question, children, you'll find that in the textbook, there are some window questions on each page. If you can answer those questions and write them down in your notebooks, I'm sure all the answers to those questions I have already given in the slides. So you can always write those answers first, and then when I come back in my next session with the longer questions and shorter questions, you will be much more clearer about it. Remember, children, that the questions which are given in the textbook, the window questions, after every short paragraph, those questions are very short ones. If try to answer them in 1 or 2 words only. And another important thing I want to tell you is that why it is important to read the story word by word and line by line is because we get reference to context also. So to be able to answer the reference to context, you should have a complete grip about the lesson. And above all, children, every lesson in literature gives us a lot of value because we are inspired by other people's lives. So here, Douglas' life has been really inspirational, and I'm sure many of you would like to read the book, The Man in the Mountains. That's all for today, children. We'll see you next class. I hope you'll keep doing your work and posting your queries to me on my mail. Thank you so much, children.